You felt it before you understood it. A quiet heaviness when you woke up. Not fear exactly, more like pressure sitting in your chest, as if today mattered more than most days, even though nothing on your calendar explained why. You moved slower. You thought deeper. Your emotions were closer to the surface than usual. That was not weakness. That was sensitivity. Something in your spirit already knew this morning would test you. You carried old fatigue into the early hours, memories of disappointments, unanswered prayers, conversations you replay too often. Part of you wanted to stay still, to delay, to protect yourself from making another hard choice. And yet, despite that weight, you acted differently than you once would have. You paused instead of reacting. You restrained words that once would have spilled out. You chose patience when irritation was justified. You chose integrity when no one was watching. That choice did not feel heroic. It felt tiring. But heaven measures moments differently than humans do. What you experienced was not random emotion. It was the friction that comes right before growth. Whenever you feel that inward tension where obedience costs more than comfort, it means something is at stake. The reason your emotions were stirred this morning is because your decision mattered in the unseen. You were standing at a quiet intersection. Repeat the old pattern, or step into a new one. And without applause, without validation, you stepped forward. You may still be questioning whether it really counted. You may be telling yourself it was small, ordinary, forgettable. But small acts done under pressure carry unusual weight. Heaven does not look for drama, it looks for agreement. When your emotions want one thing and your spirit chooses another, that is agreement. That is maturity. That is why God smiled, not because you were perfect, but because you were aligned. There was resistance around you today that felt out of proportion. Minor inconveniences felt heavier. People seemed sharper. Distractions louder. That was not coincidence. Resistance increases when alignment begins. Darkness does not panic when people talk about faith. It responds when faith is practiced quietly. What you did disrupted a pattern that had been working against you for a long time. You are in a season where emotional honesty matters. God is not offended by how deeply you feel. He is watching what you do with those feelings. Today, you did not let them rule you. You acknowledged them and still chose rightly. That is growth many never reach. Most people numb their emotions or obey only when it feels good. You obeyed when it felt costly. There was a version of you that would have justified compromise this morning. That version would have said, just this once, or I deserve relief, or no one will know. But you have crossed a line internally. You are no longer motivated only by relief. You are motivated by alignment. That shift is irreversible. Once your spirit tastes clarity, chaos loses its appeal. This is why your journey has felt isolating. You are being trained to listen inwardly rather than follow noise. Your emotional depth is not a liability, it is a tuning fork. It helps you discern what is off before others notice. But sensitivity without discipline becomes overwhelm. Today, you practice discipline, and heaven noted it. Do not underestimate the power of a single morning decision. History changes in quiet rooms. Futures shift in unobserved moments. You did not just avoid a mistake, you reinforced a pattern of obedience that will carry you when clarity fades again. Obedience builds muscle memory for the soul. There will be temptation later to question yourself, to wonder if you were too strict, too cautious, too restrained. Do not entertain that thought. Peace follows obedience, but sometimes it arrives slowly. Trust the order: obedience first, confirmation later. The fact that you are hearing this now is part of that confirmation. According to what is revealed in the book of Psalms, it is written in the book of Psalms, chapter 37, verse 5. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act. This is not vague encouragement. It is a declaration of cause and effect. Commitment invites movement. Trust triggers action, not always immediately visible, but always precise. God smiled today because you committed without knowing the outcome. You acted without demanding proof. You trusted without controlling the result. That posture releases divine involvement. When you stop trying to manage everything, God steps in to manage what you cannot. Now hear this clearly: do not drift after doing the right thing. Drifting often follows obedience because the enemy cannot stop obedience, only dilute it afterward. Guard what you gained this morning. Guard your inner stillness. Guard your resolve. Stay connected to this message stream. Subscribe so you remain anchored when emotions fluctuate again. Like and share this message if it speaks to your experience. It helps others recognize their own quiet victories. And as a final act for this section, pause and comment 77 below. Not out of habit, but as a marker you chose alignment today, even when it cost you emotionally. Heaven saw it, God smiled, and this is only the beginning. What you considered small was never small in the unseen. That is the misunderstanding that keeps many people from realizing the weight of their own obedience. You thought the act was ordinary because it fit naturally into your day. You thought it was insignificant because no one reacted. But the smallest movements, when aligned with heaven, create the loudest disturbances in the spiritual realm. What you did not echo on earth, but it resounded in places you cannot see. There are realms that respond not to noise, but to authority. Authority is released through alignment, not through effort, when you chose rightly. Something shifted around you. Old permissions were revoked, old access points closed. Patterns that once repeated effortlessly suddenly encountered resistance. That is why things felt subtly different afterward, not easier, clearer. When clarity replaces chaos, darkness loses leverage. You must understand how the unseen operates. Darkness thrives on predictability. It studies patterns, habits, emotional reactions. It learns how to push the right button at the right time. That is why cycles exist. That is why certain struggles feel rehearsed. But when you break pattern, even once you disrupt the script, what you did created an interruption. And interruptions force recalculation. You did not just avoid a wrong choice. You exercised authority you may not have known you possessed. Authority does not announce itself. It manifests through consequence. After your decision, something that once had power over you felt weaker. Not gone, but weakened. That is how authority grows incrementally, invisibly, undeniably. You may have noticed an unusual stillness afterward, or perhaps an uneasiness you could not name. That is because shifts are rarely comfortable at first. When spiritual alignment occurs, the soul must catch up. Familiar struggles protest their eviction. Old thoughts attempt one last negotiation, but they no longer speak from a position of strength. This is why some people sabotage their own progress right after doing the right thing. They feel the unfamiliar space and rush to fill it with noise. But you are learning to sit in the quiet. You are learning not to rush past transition. That patience is evidence of growth. The act itself was simple. The effect was not. Something recalibrated. You stepped into a different lane of responsibility. Not a heavier burden, but a clearer one. When authority increases, confusion decreases. You may still face difficulty, but you will notice it no longer defines you. It informs you instead. This shift also explains why certain connections feel misaligned now. Some conversations feel shallow. Some dynamics feel strained. That is not arrogance or distance, it is recalibration. When you change position spiritually, relationships must either adjust or fall away. That process is not punishment, it is pruning. What you triggered cannot be reversed by doubt. Authority once exercised leaves residue. Even if you question yourself later, the shift already occurred. That is why darkness attempts discouragement after obedience, not before. It tries to make you doubt the significance of what already happened, but significance is proven by reaction, not by feeling. You are not imagining the heightened awareness. You are not overthinking the subtle changes. You are becoming more perceptive because alignment sharpens perception. When the noise quiets, discernment speaks louder. This is the beginning of spiritual adulthood, when you no longer need constant affirmation to know you acted rightly. There is also a warning woven into this moment. Authority unused weakens. Patterns return when vigilance fades. This is not to frighten you, but to ground you. What shifted must be maintained through consistency, not intensity. You do not need to repeat the act only to continue walking in the same direction. You are learning that obedience is not about perfection, it is about posture. A heart inclined toward alignment will course correct quickly. That is why heaven responds so swiftly to you now. You are no longer resistant. You are responsive. This responsiveness is what activates heaven's involvement. When God sees someone who listens and moves, even imperfectly, He entrusts them with more influence. Influence is not control over others. It is stability within yourself. The more stable you become, the less external forces can move you. As the ancient words recorded in the book of Proverbs still echo today, according to what is revealed in the book of Proverbs, chapter 16, verse 7. When a man's ways please the Lord, He makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. This does not mean conflict disappears. It means opposition loses authority. Even resistance is forced to adjust when alignment is present. That is what you initiated. Not peace as comfort, but peace as order. Order in your thoughts, order in your reactions, order in your direction. When order enters, confusion exits. When confusion exits, fear has nothing to stand on. Do not expect everyone to understand what changed. Most will not notice. Some will sense it and feel uncomfortable without knowing why. A few will be drawn toward the stability you carry. All of this is natural. Shifts in the unseen always manifest relationally. You are stepping into a quieter strength, not louder, not aggressive. Quiet strength does not need to prove itself, it simply stands. And standing after alignment is an act of authority. What you did was small in appearance, but strategic in impact. Real shifts rarely announce themselves. They reveal themselves over time through sustained change, and you have already begun. The pressure you felt after dawn was not random, and it was not emotional coincidence. It was reaction. When alignment happens quietly, resistance responds aggressively. What surprised you was not that resistance came, but how fast it arrived, almost immediately after your decision. Something pushed back through distraction, irritation, sudden fatigue, or an unexpected wave of doubt. That timing tells the story. Opposition does not waste energy on what poses no threat. You are beginning to recognize a pattern the moment you choose clarity. Confusion tries to rush in. The moment you choose restraint, temptation grows louder. The moment you choose faith, logic sharpens its knives. This is not because you are weak. It is because you are progressing. Resistance escalates when old access points are closing. What once worked effortlessly against you now requires force, and force reveals fear. Darkness is not creative. It is reactive. It studies your past and assumes your future will repeat it. That is why pattern breaking is so disruptive. When you acted differently, you forced a recalculation. Resistance intensified because the script failed, and when the script fails, pressure increases to rush you back into familiarity. That is why the attack often feels internal before it feels external. Thoughts turn sharper. Emotions feel exaggerated. Old memories resurface uninvited. These are not signs of regression. They are signs of eviction. When something is losing ground, it makes noise on the way out. You may have wondered why the resistance felt personal, why it targeted your confidence, your worth, your resolve. It is because those are the gates. Darkness does not fight outcomes first. It fights identity. If it can make you doubt who you are becoming, it can slow what you are building, but doubt is not defeat. Doubt is a question, and questions lose power when answered through consistency. This is where many people misinterpret the moment. They assume resistance means they made the wrong choice. In truth, resistance often confirms the right one. Ease follows conformity. Friction follows transformation. If nothing pushes back, nothing changed. But something did change, and the reaction proves it. You are learning not to panic when pressure rises. You are learning to observe instead of absorb. That distance is crucial. When you stop internalizing resistance, it loses leverage. Pressure only crushes what it can attach to. When it cannot attach, it exposes itself. This is also why the resistance felt urgent. It tried to rush you to force a response, a decision, a retreat. Urgency is a tactic. Alignment moves steadily, opposition moves frantically. When something tries to hurry you out of peace, it is rarely from God. God guides, pressure pushes, pressure. You are not required to answer every thought. You are not required to resolve every feeling immediately. Stillness is not passivity, it is authority under control. The ability to pause under pressure is evidence of maturity. You did not collapse into reaction. You held your ground. That alone weakened what came against you. There is a deeper reason resistance increased after dawn. Morning decisions set the tone for the day. When you aligned early, you protected territory before the noise arrived. That is why the pushback came quickly, because the window was closing. What you protected early could not be accessed later. This pattern will repeat as you grow. New levels bring new forms of resistance, not necessarily heavier, but subtler, less dramatic, more psychological. That is why discernment matters more than intensity. You do not need to fight harder. You need to see clearer. As the apostle reminds us in his letter to the Corinthians, the ancient words recorded in the second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 10, verse 3. For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. This is not metaphorical language. It is instruction. The battle you are in is not won through reaction, argument, or force, but through positioning. When you stay aligned, resistance exhausts itself. You are not called to chase every threat. You are called to remain steady. Stability frustrates chaos more than confrontation ever could. When you do not move, panic shifts sides. That is what happened today. The pressure came, but you did not fold. And because you did not fold, something else did. This is also why rest may feel unfamiliar right now. When you have lived under pressure for a long time, peace can feel suspicious. You may catch yourself waiting for the next hit. But peace is not absence of threat. It is presence of order. Let yourself adjust to it. Do not sabotage calm just to feel familiar tension. You are stepping into a phase where discernment replaces urgency, where awareness replaces anxiety, where confidence is quiet, not loud. This is how authority settles in, not through spectacle, but through consistency. Before moving forward, mark this moment internally, not with noise, but with clarity. And if you choose to externalize that clarity, there is a simple phrase you can write below: I stand firm. This is not a slogan. It is a declaration of posture. Writing it is not about others seeing it. It is about you naming what you are practicing. Standing firm does not mean everything stops shaking around you. It means you stop shaking with it. Resistance came because something shifted. Pressure increased because access decreased. And you remained standing not because it was easy, but because you are changing. That change will continue. What is happening now is not just spiritual movement, it is a change in pace. You may have noticed that time feels different lately. Days feel full even when little gets done, or the opposite, hours pass quickly. Yet you feel drained without knowing why. This is not about poor scheduling, this is about energy. God is not first teaching you how to manage your calendar. He is teaching you how to steward your strength. Most people exhaust themselves not because they do too much, but because they give energy to the wrong things. Attention leaks faster than time. Emotional reactions, mental rehearsals, unnecessary explanations, silent comparisons, all of these drain far more than activity ever could. And when God begins to accelerate assignment, the first thing He trains is discernment of energy flow. You are entering a season where stamina matters more than speed. That is why you cannot live the way you used to. Hustle without alignment will break you. Productivity without wisdom will hollow you out. God is smiling not because you are doing more, but because you are finally ready to do less with precision. Here is the practical shift you are being invited into. Stop asking, "Do I have time for this?" and start asking, "Do I have energy for this?" Time is neutral. Energy is sacred. Time will pass regardless. Energy must be stewarded intentionally. Begin by noticing what restores you and what drains you. Not what looks productive. Not what earns approval. But what strengthens your inner clarity. Some conversations cost more than they give. Some obligations feel noble but leave you scattered. Some media keeps your body still while your mind runs marathons. Awareness is not judgment, it is strategy. You are not meant to be available to everything. Accessibility is not a virtue when it comes at the expense of alignment. God did not call you to be constantly reachable. He called you to be rightly positioned. That means learning when to engage and when to conserve. Rest is not inactivity. Rest is strategic withdrawal. It is how strength is replenished without apology. When you rest intentionally, you are not falling behind. You are refueling for what actually matters. Exhaustion is not a badge of honor. It is often a warning sign of misplaced focus. Another practice you are being led into is emotional boundaries. Not walls boundaries, and walls shut everything out. Boundaries filter. You are allowed to care without carrying. You are allowed to listen without absorbing. You are allowed to be present without being responsible for outcomes that are not yours. This is especially important now, because increased assignment attracts increased demand. People will sense your steadiness. Some will lean too heavily. Others will test your limits unconsciously. Energy stewardship means learning to say no without guilt and yes without resentment. Resentment is often the cost of unguarded generosity. Your mornings matter more than you realize. Energy is set early, What you feed your mind before the noise arrives determines how resilient you remain after it does. Begin your day with intention, not reaction. Even a few minutes of stillness recalibrates your entire nervous system. Alignment is not achieved by force, it is maintained by rhythm. There is also wisdom in how you end your day. What you carry into rest determines how you wake. Release what does not belong to you. Mentally place unfinished concerns where they belong in God's hands, not your thoughts. Sleep is not escape, it is trust practiced physically. This kind of stewardship may feel unfamiliar at first. You may feel less busy but more effective, less rushed but more grounded. That is the sign you are doing it right. Clarity often feels quieter than chaos. Do not mistake quiet for lack of progress. As Jesus himself declared in the Gospel of Matthew, it is written in the book of Matthew, chapter 11, verse 28. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. This invitation is not poetic, it is practical. Rest is not a reward after obedience, it is a requirement for sustained obedience. God is not asking you to burn brighter, He is asking you to burn longer. That requires pacing, discernment, and humility. Humility to admit your limits, wisdom to honor them, strength to protect them. If this message resonates, it is because you are ready to live differently, not harder, but wiser. And if these words are helping you recalibrate, feel free to like this message. It helps others who are searching for stability find it. If someone you care about is running on empty, sharing this may give them permission to slow down without shame. And if you want to stay connected to teachings that help you walk aligned rather than exhausted, subscribing keeps you anchored to that rhythm. This is not about doing everything. It is about doing what matters with strength intact. You are not falling behind. You are being trained to last. There comes a moment in every true journey of obedience when logic can no longer lead, familiarity can no longer protect, and comfort can no longer accompany you. That moment is not loud. It does not arrive with applause. It comes quietly, often disguised as a simple instruction that feels unreasonable. This is where the story of Abraham intersects with your own. Abraham was not searching for adventure. He was not restless for change or He was settled, rooted, surrounded by what was known. Family, land, history, identity, all of it anchored him to a place called home. And it was precisely there, in that stability, that God spoke, not with a detailed plan, not with guarantees, but with a command that required movement before understanding. The instruction was clear, but the outcome was not. Leave your country. Leave your people. Leave your father's household. Go to a land I will show you. Notice the order. The leaving came before the showing. The obedience came before the clarity. Abraham was asked to step into uncertainty carrying nothing but trust. This is where many people stop listening. They want reassurance before movement. They want confirmation before commitment. But Abraham moved while the destination was still unnamed. That is not recklessness. That is faith in its purest form. Faith does not demand sight. It walks with confidence that sight will follow. You may not be asked to leave a physical land, but you are being asked to leave something familiar, a mindset, a pattern, a version of yourself that once kept you safe but now keeps you small. Like Abraham, you are standing between what you know and what you are promised. And like Abraham, obedience feels costly because it requires release. Later in Abraham's life, the test deepened. What began with leaving a place culminated in laying down a promise. Isaac was not just a son, he was fulfillment embodied, the miracle made visible. And yet, God asked for him. Not because God desired loss, but because God desired Abraham's heart to remain free from attachment that could rival trust. This is where obedience becomes surrender. Leaving Ur required courage. Offering Isaac required intimacy. One was about direction, the other was about devotion. Both were necessary to shape Abraham into who he was called to become. You must understand this: God never wanted Isaac's life. He wanted Abraham's allegiance. The test was never about sacrifice, it was about order. Was the gift above the giver, or was the giver still first? This mirrors what happens in your life when blessings arrive. Promotions, relationships, stability, influence. The very things you prayed for can quietly become the things you cling to. And God, in His faithfulness, will sometimes test not your lack but your abundance. Not your desperation but your attachment. Abraham's obedience rewrote generational history. Because he moved, nations were born. Because he trusted, descendants inherited promise. His private obedience created public legacy. What you do in unseen moments carries the same potential. Your obedience today may answer prayers you will never hear spoken aloud. There were no witnesses on the mountain with Isaac. No crowd to validate Abraham's faith, just silence, tension, and trust. That is often how true obedience feels: isolated, misunderstood, heavy. But heaven watches closely in those moments. Provision arrives not before obedience, but because of it. As was spoken in the sacred texts of old, the voice of God thundered in the book of Genesis, chapter 12. Verse 1. Go from your country, your people and your father's household to the land I will show you. This command was not softened. It was not negotiated. And yet, within it lived the promise of blessing that would ripple through history. Abraham did not know the full story when he took the first step. He only knew the voice, and that was enough. You are being trained the same way. Not to know everything, but to recognize who is speaking. Familiarity with God's voice matters more than clarity about the future. If you are feeling the tension of release right now, you are not failing, you are aligning. If obedience feels like loss, remember Abraham. What looks like surrender in the moment often becomes multiplication in time. God does not subtract to leave you empty. He clears space to fill it rightly. There is also a warning woven into Abraham's story. Partial obedience delays promise. Abraham hesitated at times. He compromised, and each detour carried consequence. But God remained faithful, patiently steering him back. Obedience does not require perfection, but it does require return. When you realize you've held on too tightly, let go quickly. Delay is costly, but correction is always available. Your story is still unfolding. Like Abraham, you are walking without full sight, carrying trust instead. And heaven records every step taken in faith. The same God who provided a ram on the mountain still provides today, often at the last moment, always at the right one. If this message resonates with where you are right now, mark it. At the end of this section, comment the number 999 below, not as a habit, but as a sign that you are willing to release what God asks for. Trusting that provision will meet you where obedience leads. You are not alone on the path. You are walking a road worn by faith before you, and it still leads to promise. There is a weight to this moment that cannot be explained by circumstance alone. It is not urgency, but seriousness. Not fear, but clarity. You are standing in a narrow window where awareness has been granted, and with awareness comes responsibility. This is not meant to alarm you, it is meant to steady you. Moments like this do not come often, and they do not linger without purpose. What you are sensing is consequence, not punishment, but consequence. Every choice carries momentum. Some choices build slowly, others accelerate suddenly. You are in a season where hesitation has more impact than before. Not because God has become impatient, but because you have been prepared enough to know better. Light increases accountability. Mercy does not disappear, but it does shift its posture. There are seasons where mercy rescues you from ignorance. And there are seasons where mercy empowers you to stand. The danger is not that mercy leaves, it is that people confuse mercy with permission. Permission delays growth. Mercy matures it. You are no longer unaware. You see patterns clearly now. You recognize the early signs of drift. You know which thoughts lead you away from alignment and which draw you deeper into it. That awareness is a gift, but it removes excuses. You cannot unknow what you now know. This is why this season feels quieter but heavier. God is not shouting because He does not need to. He is trusting you to act from discernment, not pressure. Silence from God does not always mean distance. Often, it means trust. He is watching to see what you will do with what has already been revealed. There is a temptation at this stage to delay, to say, "I'll respond later," or "I need more time." But delay is rarely neutral. Delay often becomes decision by default, and default decisions usually lead back to old ground. You are being invited to choose deliberately, not dramatically. Standing firm now does not require grand gestures. It requires consistency, choosing the same aligned response again and again, especially when no one notices, especially when the emotional payoff is low, especially when the old path still looks easier. Firmness is not rigidity, it is loyalty to truth. You may feel a strange pressure, as if something is urging you forward while something else pulls you back. That tension exists because two seasons are overlapping. One is ending, one is beginning. And the space between them is uncomfortable because it requires release without immediate replacement. This is where many retreat, not because they are weak, but because uncertainty feels unsafe. But uncertainty is not danger when God is involved. It is transition. And transitions demand trust more than effort. You are not being asked to sprint, you are being asked to remain upright. Upright in thought, upright in motive, upright in response. There is also a seriousness about boundaries in this season. Not dramatic separations, but quiet decisions. What you allow access to your mind, what you entertain emotionally, what you tolerate relationally. Tolerance can be compassion, but it can also be avoidance. Discernment knows the difference. You are not being hardened, you are being clarified. Softness without clarity leads to confusion. Clarity without softness leads to pride. God is teaching you both. To remain tender without being pliable to everything. To remain open without being unguarded. There is a reason this season feels like a line rather than a loop. You are not circling a lesson anymore. You are crossing into application. Lessons can be revisited. Application cannot be undone without consequence. That is why the atmosphere feels weightier. You are not being tested for knowledge, you are being tested for embodiment. As the Spirit spoke through the prophet Jeremiah, it was proclaimed in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 6, verse 16. Stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is and walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls. Notice the order. Look. Ask. Walk. Rest comes last, not first. Rest follows decision. Standing at the crossroads is not comfortable. It exposes hesitation. It reveals desire. It forces honesty. But it also offers direction. You are not lost, you are deciding. And deciding requires courage, not certainty. Do not confuse firmness with harshness. You are not meant to become severe or withdrawn. You are meant to become anchored. Anchors do not move with every wave, but they do not fight the sea either. They hold position quietly. That is what you are learning now. This is also a season where consequences become clearer, not harsher, clearer. When alignment is chosen, peace follows more quickly. When misalignment occurs, dissonance is immediate. That sensitivity is not punishment. It is guidance refined. The sooner you feel it, the sooner you can correct. You are being trusted with immediacy, with the ability to adjust without collapse, with the strength to stand without spectacle. This is not the season of rescue, it is the season of resolve. Resolve does not shout, it settles. And once settled, it becomes difficult to move. That is what is forming in you now. Not perfection, not immunity to struggle, but a settled commitment to walk the way you have been shown. You are not at risk of being abandoned. You are at risk of underestimating the importance of this moment. Do not rush past it. Do not dramatize it either. Simply stand. Choose what you already know is right, and remain there. That is enough. You have come far enough now to feel the weight of what is being entrusted to you. This is no longer about preparation alone. This is about embodiment, about becoming someone who does not merely hear truth, but lives from it instinctively. The path ahead is not dramatic, but it is decisive. And the days coming will test not what you believe, but how deeply it has settled into you. What is forming in you now is stability, not the kind that resists change, but the kind that remains anchored while change happens around it. You are learning to move without panic, to decide without frenzy, to wait without losing direction. That quiet confidence did not arrive overnight. It was built through moments of restraint, obedience, release, and resolve, piece by piece. Something unshakable has been forming. You may not feel triumphant, you may not feel finished, that is good. Completion can lead to complacency. What you are experiencing instead is readiness. Readiness is calm. It does not rush forward, but it does not retreat either. It stands present, alert, and responsive. This is also the stage where comparison tries one last time. You may glance sideways and wonder why others seem to advance faster. Celebrate louder. Struggle less. Do not measure your path by visible milestones. Some journeys are deep rather than wide. Some callings are quiet rather than crowded. God does not distribute assignments based on popularity, but on capacity. And your capacity has been expanding carefully. You are becoming someone who can carry light without needing attention. Someone who can influence atmosphere without controlling people. Someone who can remain faithful even when results lag behind obedience. These qualities are rare, and they are formed slowly. That is why your process has felt deliberate. Heaven builds slowly what it intends to last. There is also a reassurance you need to hear now. You have not missed your moment. Timing is not slipping through your fingers. God is not scrambling to catch up with your decisions. He is not surprised by your pace. What feels slow to you is often protection, ensuring that what comes next does not crush what is still forming. The road ahead will still include resistance, but it will feel different, less chaotic, more defined. You will recognize opposition faster and recover from it sooner. Not because battles end, but because your footing improves. When roots go deep, storms lose their threat. You are also stepping into a season where your life becomes instructive not through teaching, but through consistency. People will observe how you respond under pressure, how you speak when provoked, how you remain grounded when outcomes are uncertain. You may never know how many are strengthened simply by watching you endure with integrity. This is why humility remains essential. Strength without humility becomes brittle. Authority without compassion becomes harsh. You are being shaped to carry both, to remain firm without becoming rigid, to remain kind without becoming weak. That balance is difficult, but it is powerful. As the ancient words recorded in Romans still echo today, it was proclaimed in the book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 37. In all these things, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. Notice the phrase "in all these things," not after them, not once they are removed. In the midst of pressure, uncertainty, and resistance, you are not barely surviving, you are prevailing. This does not mean life becomes easy. It means difficulty no longer defines you. You are no longer shaped by every challenge that passes through. You are shaped by the truth that anchors you beneath them. That is what it means to mature spiritually, to remain yourself regardless of circumstance. You are not standing at the edge anymore. You are walking forward. The ground may not always feel solid, but it is sufficient. Each step confirms the last. Each choice reinforces the path. Momentum is not always felt as speed. Sometimes it is felt as steadiness. If these words have accompanied you through this journey, it is because you value depth over noise. And if this message has helped you name what you are experiencing internally, feel free to like it not as an obligation, but as a quiet acknowledgement. If you know someone who is walking a similar path and needs reassurance rather than hype, sharing this may steady them. And if you wish to remain connected to messages that prioritize alignment, endurance, and clarity, subscribing keeps that door open naturally. You are not being rushed. You are not being overlooked. You are being established. What comes next will require you, but it will not consume you. You will meet it as you are now grounded, aware, and ready. And that is enough. You do not need to rush away from this moment. Let it settle. Let the words fade naturally into your own thoughts, into your own pace, into your own next step. Nothing here demands an immediate reaction. Some truths are meant to be carried quietly, not announced loudly. What matters most is not how strongly you feel right now, but what you do when feeling returns to normal. Transformation rarely happens in heightened moments. It happens when ordinary days are lived differently because something deeper has shifted. If even one sentence stayed with you, that is enough. If one perspective softened your inner resistance, that is enough. You are not leaving this message with all the answers. That was never the goal. You are leaving with steadiness, with awareness, with a clearer sense of direction than before. That clarity will continue to unfold in ways that cannot be forced. If this message resonated, you are free to acknowledge it in whatever way feels right to you. Some will simply carry it forward in silence. Others may choose to like or share it so someone else can find it at the right time. There is no pressure here, only invitation. Stay attentive, stay grounded. The next steps will reveal themselves as you walk,